Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandon Bryan, and today we're going to be exploring some emerging trends, right, in project management and what you can do in 2026 and beyond to stay ahead. And you will notice that before the slideshow, there was a poll, and a couple different reasons for that. I want to see, the education level of everyone who is viewing this webinar, right? And I always say that, project management is both a science and an art, right? The science part of it is it's well documented, the processes, the frameworks, the tools, the methods, they're all laid out in a structured, very explicit way. And then the art, however, is, what you practice every day. You're navigating people, you're navigating ambiguity, pressure, change. And that part is much more difficult to capture in a textbook. And some people say, well, the book doesn't teach what really happens in the real world, Brandon. And the truth of the matter is, it does. It does teach what happens in the real world. The disconnect is not necessarily the inputs, the tools, the techniques, and the outputs in the book. The disconnect is your mindset. That's the disconnect. And you're not seeing the whole picture through the right lens. And it's really that mindset that kind of blocks us from making that connection from what happens in the classroom, that science, to what happens out there in the field where the rubber meets the road, that art. And a lot of professionals tell me, that project management is only for those in formal leadership roles, or it only applies in big projects, right? It's like they're working in a vacuum where, project management doesn't really matter. The truth is, project management is relevant at every level of an organization. It impacts the way that work gets done. It impacts decisions that are made, and it impacts results that are achieved, right? From the janitor to the CEO, everybody is a stakeholder, right? Bringing their talent, their ideas, their insight, their influence in different ways. So, as a project manager, every single action you take, every decision that you make, it contributes to the success of a project, even in ways that you may not immediately recognize. So today, what I want to do is encourage you to think outside of your box. Think outside of, you know, your normal framework. A mindset really empowers you to collaborate more effectively, make smarter decisions, and create real impact, no matter what your role, no matter what your title is in the organization. Because, here's the exciting part for you, for us. The skills you develop, as a project manager today, they don't just prepare you for your next project. They prepare you for the future, that you want to create. Okay, so for those of you who took that poll, thank you very much. Let's just kind of take a quick look at the results there. It looks like about 70% of you are PMP certified, 8% PMI ACP, 6% CAPM, and then 16% of you have not started that journey. And if you're coming in just a little bit late, that's okay. There will be a poll next month. I'm going to run that poll every month just so I can capture the audience, because really this webinar is not about me. It's not about RMC or Peterson's. It's about you, the audience. It's about the everyday practitioner. And I want to hear from you. I want to know what your voice is. And that's the way we're going to do it moving forward. Okay. So let's take a look and let's dive into some administrative stuff before we get into the meat and the potatoes. So before we get started, I want to highlight where this material comes from, right? And that's the important piece of this, right? This webinar uses industry leading sources, like the ones you see on the right-hand side here. And, and RMC's own tools like Tricks of the Trade and PM Fast Track. Now, the PM Fast Track is, our professional exam simulation tool that we use in-house. We use it internally at RMC Learning Solutions to prepare learners for the PMP exam itself. So the simulations can be separated by topic, process group, knowledge areas, and it's very similar to the PMP exam itself. And you're thinking, well, okay, why does this matter? Let me tell you why this matters. Because if you're trying to increase your salary, right? If you're trying to increase your knowledge for a promotion, it is important for you to align yourself with materials and professionals that can help you do that. Okay. And you are in the right place. Okay. Let's move forward. Now, a little bit of copyright, right? We're still in the administrative piece here, but just a quick heads up before we dive in. Everything you see in this presentation is proprietary data of RMC and protected by copyright. Okay, so it's intended for the webinar's purpose for our viewers, so please don't use it outside of its intent. And that also means for commercial use. As a quick caveat, I will say though, there's a lot of good information in the slides. So if you need to capture a screenshot, please do that because it may answer some questions you may have after this webinar. Okay. So a little bit about RMC. So Rita McCullough built RMC by creating a practical, outcome-based materials to teach you how to think like a project manager. Okay, not just memorization concepts. And we say it plenty of times, and in our courses we say it plenty of times that you can memorize the project management book of knowledge, that PMBOK. You can memorize it word for word and go take the exam and catastrophically fail the exam. Why? Because it's not about memorization, it's about application of complex concepts, and that's what we teach. So Rita's methods used real world scenarios, right? Practice questions, engaging techniques to help professionals succeed on projects in their careers. So we've been helping professionals since 1991, and now we reach over, 60 regions, 18 different languages around the world, and we've got it over 1 million professionals in project management, agile, hybrid approaches, and using methods that work. Self-study, virtual, in class, in person, etc. And what that really means for you, the takeaway is that, we're using proven methods, proven strategies from experts that can apply immediately, to your projects more effectively. So a little bit about me. There I am, right? Um, that QR code right there sends you directly to my LinkedIn, right? And it's good for a couple of reasons. One, because it's always great to connect with like-minded professionals. Second, if you have a question after the fact, you can message me directly, and I can get back to you in a quicker fashion. So as I said before, welcome. My name is Brandon Bryan, and over the years, I've worked on projects of all kinds in real world situations, from complex life or death programs in the Army to professional development courses across several industries. And I've trained thousands of professionals at all skill levels, right? From 17-year-olds to seasoned CEOs. And let me ask you a question, right? Let's just get outside the box for a second. How many of you have sat in a classroom only for someone to read to you, right? Fancy concepts that you don't understand and you have no idea to apply them, right? You walk away with a certificate in your hand, a nice, shiny, fancy certificate, but you don't have a clue how to apply the concepts that you've learned. Do I have your attention yet? Because it gets worse, ladies and gentlemen. It gets worse. You go back to your organization, and the first thing your organization says is, "Hey, Samantha, that was a great class that you went to. Can you sit down and let's start working on a strategy, a glide path forward so you can implement all the things that you learned in that class?" All right. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Maybe it does. And if it doesn't, well, congratulations, you haven't been put in that position. I, ladies and gentlemen, am very passionate about what I do. I just don't read the textbook. Okay, anybody can do that. The books assume perfect project management. You know, working in the real world, we all know that project management is not perfect. And let's keep it real here. Okay, most of you spend your days putting out fires. You truly do. So, I mean, honestly, you'd probably be better off watching a fire safety webinar right now instead. So let's look at the slide just a little bit and we'll kind of go over who I am. 25 years in the Army, so leading multi-million-dollar intercontinental programs, projects, business analytics, developing and implementing professional development programs in the real world where rubber meets the road. Okay, field-based applications. I've had a lot of success, but I've also failed a lot, a lot. 7 years facilitating professional development instruction for over 20 plus courses. So if you can think of a professional development course, I've probably written it and I've probably instructed something very close to it. Okay, so just something very interesting there. Education certifications there. I have a master's in management, PMP, just like many of you, a Lean Six Sigma black belt, certified Scrum Master, contracting officer representative, and there are quite a few that didn't make it on the slide. I didn't want to clutter it up. And then, of course, last but not least, numerous professional development programs within the military. Now, this slide, ladies and gentlemen, about me is not a high five to myself. Okay, this slide, this is not about me. Like I said, it's about you. What this slide communicates truly is that I have decades in the field. I know what it's like. And I have thousands of hours in the classroom. So when I teach and view project management, I do it from a holistic view, looking from the field and the classroom. And I can make that translation for you. It's not a problem. Okay. Our agenda today. Okay. A couple different things we're going to talk about. So our goal is to give you insights, right? Practical actions and career path to strengthen your project management capabilities for 2026 and beyond. So we're going to talk about emerging trends in project management. And really to do that, we're going to start by, looking at the trends that are reshaping the project management landscape, from AI-driven workflows to virtual first collaborations and adaptive delivery models. Understanding these shifts are really going to help you anticipate change and lead your teams effectively. Next, we're going to look at upskilling for future PM roles, right? And what does that even mean? It means that we're mastering virtual communication, kind of like what we're doing right now, right? We're building AI, we're building automation literacy, a couple different things. We're strengthening adaptive leadership. Okay, we're becoming data driven in your decision making. You need to make a decision? Great. Do you have the metrics to support that decision? Right? And these aren't optional. They're not. They're essential for the next generation of project managers. And it's something you need to know. Third, right? Staying competitive in a rapidly evolving landscape, right? When we explore strategies to remain competitive, in a world where projects and technology and team structures are constantly evolving, staying ahead means a lot of things. It means keeping up with trends. It means being proactively applying them to your work. Okay? If you're not first, in many cases, you're what? That's right. You are last. So next we're going to look at actions you can implement today, right? So what's the value of watching a webinar if you can't take something from it that you can use today to make you, your people, and your organization better? So we'll move on into practical actionable steps, right, that you can take immediately. So they're simple but powerful activities designed to map your skills, upskill in key areas. So those competencies, those KPIs, we're going to take a look at that and demonstrate measurable impact on your projects. Because if it's not measurable, it's not real. Okay. We're going to also talk about continuing your learning journey with RMC. So, I'll show you how RMC can support your ongoing learning journey. Now, we looked at it a while ago, and, there's quite a few of you that have not started your project management journey. As a matter of fact, about 16%, and 76% have a PMP certification. So we're going to look at that. We're going to also look at micro-learning modules to certification pathways. And these resources, really the point of bringing these up is so you can grow as a project manager after today's session, something you can take away today. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about PDUs. Now, I'm going to give you a quick overview of PDUs because there's a percentage of you that do not have certifications yet, but you will get there. You'll get there. Just take the right approach, mindset, right? We're going to talk about PDUs. I'm going to let you know what PDUs are, why PDUs are important. And for all of you that do have your certifications, I'm going to let you know how to submit your PDUs. Okay, we're still working on fine tuning it to make it more user friendly for you to take out some of the guesswork. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with questions. So planning on having some time for your questions there. There are quite a few of you online today, like 127 of you online. So if I get too many questions, we may have to take it to LinkedIn or another approach. You can also submit them through our website if I can't get to you. But this is really your chance during the questions to clarify, dig deeper, pick my brain, explore how these concepts apply directly to your projects and your career. You've heard of words like stakeholder engagement, communications plan, risk register, Gantt chart, network diagrams. You've heard of these fancy words, or maybe you haven't. But what the heck do they mean? We're going to talk about that. Okay. Maybe in future sessions we can kind of peel that onion back. But these are things that you need to know, you need to understand, and you need to know how to apply them. So by the end of the session, right, the goal is, the intent is to understand where project management is headed, but also have concrete steps you can take to stay ahead and grow as a leader within your organization. Okay? So emerging trends in project management. So really the takeaway about emerging trends in project management today, right? It's evolving, right? It's a rapidly evolving business landscape. And understanding emerging trends in project management is not just beneficial, ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely essential. So let me ask you this. If you don't evolve or embrace change, what's going to happen to you? Think in your mind right now. What's going to happen to you if you don't embrace change or you don't evolve with a rapidly changing landscape? Here's an idea. Why don't we ask Radio Shack? Why don't we ask Toys R Us? Why don't we ask Blockbuster? Now, Blockbuster is a classic example, right? Because it was a company that failed to adapt to shifting towards digital streaming. And Netflix and other streaming services innovated. You probably watched them this week. Blockbuster stuck to its existing practices, to its existing traditional rental role, and unfortunately, this led to its downfall. So, as we look to the future, trends like agile methodologies, adaptive team structures, and technological advancements, right, they're reshaping how projects are delivered. They're reshaping how projects are managed. And there are plenty of case studies out there to support this. Okay, we only have to look around to see it. I would ask you this. How many of the businesses in your town, in your city, in your neck of the woods have failed because they didn't adapt to change? Think about it. What about in your own organization? Do you see leadership not adapting to change? Do you see your peers not adapting to change? What about resistance? Okay. This is all under the umbrella of the same conversation. Don't be a blockbuster. Don't be a blockbuster. Let's move on. All right. So understanding emerging trends in project management. And, we're really talking about agile, adaptive teams, technology. And, this is important because as project management, our world is changing very fast. And staying ahead of, competitors, staying ahead of those trends, it means understanding the trends and how they're shaping teams, right? How to work on projects to make them succeed, right? And we can walk through, a couple of these different trends that are redefining the role of project management and why they should matter to you. Okay, so the rise of virtual first collaboration. So think about it. You're doing it right now. Virtual first collaboration. Remember back in 2020, right? When we were going through the whole COVID, right? COVID hit and, the world was reshaped, right? Remote and hybrid work, it's no longer a trend. It changed during that time period. Some folks went back, but many folks, they didn't go back. And in some circles, it's becoming the standard. For example, many organizations, they rely on structured virtual meetings, asynchronous updates via Slack, via Teams, cloud-based collaboration tools, right? There's several of them. SharePoint's one. But what does this mean for you? Do you use those? And if you don't, why not? Have you explored those? So, simply put, your ability to communicate clearly, keep projects on track, and engage your team virtually is no longer an option. It's an absolute imperative. that you do that. So, one thing to truly understand is that teams that master, collaboration, they stay aligned. They avoid misunderstandings, okay? They maintain productivity. They maintain that momentum no matter what everyone is working on because they work collaboratively. So I've seen leaders in the past derail, right? They derailed projects because they couldn't work collaboratively or they're not open to modern ways of doing things. Okay, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, it's happened and it will continue to happen. You will see it, in your environments. Okay. So the next thing, as we move down here, increasing need for conflict resilient teams. Okay. There is a reason that conflict is mentioned 65 times in the Project Management Book of Knowledge, the 8th edition that was just released a couple weeks ago, right? There's a reason because conflict exists. And what do human conflict manifests, right? When workforces are distributed, right, alignment challenges naturally increase. So I work in Florida. My supervisor, my boss, she works in Minnesota, and my colleagues work in Colorado, geographically dispersed between different time zones. And that is very common in today's workforce, right? Teams are now using structured feedback loops, right? Virtual mediation practices, conflict prevention frameworks to stay cohesive. And, you really can't talk about mediation without talking about trust. Trust is extremely important. Do you trust your team? Does your team trust you? Can they bring you improvements? Can they bring you bad news and trust that it will be resolved? Okay, throughout my career, that answer's been yes. And throughout my career, that answer's been no. We've all, many of us have had that one stakeholder that the last thing you want to do is bring them bad news because it's not going to go good in any way. How many of you know exactly what I'm talking about? That's where that art comes in, the art of project management, right? How do you facilitate? How do you mediate? How do you communicate in those instances? And why does it matter? So it matters because if you develop these skills, right, you can prevent small issues from derailing your project. Your team stays motivated, it stays productive, right? And it's able to deliver results in complex virtual environments. Okay. So acceleration of AI driven project workflows. What does this even mean? Well, let's take a little look at it, right? The third trend is AI driven workflows, right? It's no longer futuristic. AI is here and it's actively planning how we plan, forecast, and execute our projects. Think about it right now. You can't open your Facebook, you can't open your TikTok, you can't look at a reel without thinking to yourself, is this AI? Is this real? And in some cases, you don't even know. You know exactly what I'm talking about because you see it. I mean, for example, right? There's many tools out there as a project manager that you can use. And, there's a vast range of things that you can use them for. You can generate schedules. They can predict risks, automate reporting, optimize resources. So Soloxis, that's one. Reich, that's another one. Asana, Power BI, Monday.com. Let's see, Smartsheet, Microsoft Project. Let's see, Jira, that's another one. Notion AI, Power BI. There's Hive, there's Resource Guru, and the list goes on and on and on. All it takes is a quick search, and you can find these tools at the tip of your fingertips. Okay? Are you still with me? Now, keep in mind, I would like to point out that, on our webinars, it's not too interactive, right? This is really a one-way conversation. I can see some of your questions there. But during class, when we actually give our PMP exam prep courses, it's a two-way conversation. We stop, there's questions, we discuss things. Um, but are you still there? Are these topics resonating? Does it make sense to you? It should. Think about the impact, right? Project managers who leverage AI, they can make faster, smarter decisions, right? Reduce errors and free up time for higher value work, right? What about the critical path, right? So if you have a network diagram and you're not sure what the critical path is, you can do it manually. You could do earned value. You can plug in all the formulas, if you're fancy, or you can choose a program to do it for you. Okay. What about shifting toward continuous adaptive delivery? Finally, adaptive delivery. Organizations are embracing hybrid and agile models, that allow teams to pivot at a moment's notice, right? It blends predictive planning, with the agile execution. And then what do you get? You get a hybrid, right? And hybrid is the best of both worlds. You have to understand how to pick the right approach of project management. Is it traditional? Is it waterfall? Is it agile? Do you need a hybrid approach? And why should you care? You know, as a project manager, being comfortable with adaptive delivery, it really ensures, that you lead confidently in fast moving environments. Okay. And the big takeaway, of this is really, these trends are not just interesting. It's not like the coolest thing, in TikTok. They're reshaping how project managers and how the project management role executes. They truly are. And if you don't get with the program, you're going to be a blockbuster. Don't be a blockbuster. Don't do it. Okay. Understanding them, adapting your skills, and applying these practices now, right, to the positions that you lead, right, is going to help you in the future. You're going to make smarter decisions, right? You're going to be able to stay ahead in 2026 and beyond. Okay. Later in this session, we're going to explore concrete actions you can take to map your skills, right? To grow in these different areas and make trends work for you. Okay. But for now, we're going to take a moment to reflect, right? Which of these trends impacts your project the most today? What are you worried about? What keeps you awake at night? Is it scope? Is it schedule? Is it cost? Is it risk? Is it the fact that you may be operating in a silo with blinders on and you're not opening your aperture to see it from a holistic view? 9 out of 10 students, at least the ones that I've had in the past, they come to me and they say, you know what, Brandon, I've been executing projects all my career and, I want to take my PMP exam, but I read the material and it makes no sense. Ah, but then it goes back to what I said in the beginning. It makes plenty of sense and it absolutely aligns with the real world says. You just have to see it with a different perspective. And so we put on those lenses, right? And some of that means understanding emerging trends in project management. Because if you ignore those, you're ignoring things that you can leverage to improve. Okay, let's keep moving here. Okay, how are we doing so far? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so the reality is this, right? Opportunity and crisis, they're really built from the same blocks. How you stack them really defines your outcome, right? In today's very fast, ever changing business landscape, the ability to adapt and upskill is not just beneficial, right? It's essential. And as technology advances forward and work environments shift, project managers, they must remain agile and proactive to lead successful projects. Okay. How many of you are the go to person in your organization? right? Yep, here we go. He's going to get my blood flowing. No, let's go there. How many of you are the go to person within your work group, right? Oh, well, Samantha knows everything. Lindsay knows everything. And if she's not at work, then nothing happens, right? Suddenly, no one can provide answers and no one knows where anything is at, right? Maybe work gets pushed to you because you're good at it. How many of you have ever been rewarded with more work? How many of you? That's right. Now you hear me. Now you hear me. Upscaling yourself, right? Those skills and your people. That's the secret sauce. Okay. If you're in a supervisory position, you manage or you coach, mentor, and train others, it is your obligation, right, that you prevent these types of single points of failure. Train your people. You should have a professional development program. And I'll say it again for the people in the back, you should have a professional development program. And if you don't, you should get started on it. Why? Because it prevents single points of failures and it makes everyone well rounded. Well, what if I train the person so well that they just move on and find a new career or a new position that pays more? That might happen. Train them anyway. Okay. I remember as a program manager, I identified competency gaps with a new team that I led, right? And the first thing that I did was create a spreadsheet. Nothing fancy, just a simple Excel spreadsheet. And across the left-hand side, I had everybody's name. And across the top, I had every task that I needed accomplished in that program. And I would go through and I would personally certify my managers. And I would say, okay, the first task is that you're going to take apart this mouse, and I'm going to watch you do that, and I'm going to sign off that you can do it. Sure, I know they can take apart a mouse, but I wanted eyes on. I wanted to see them do it. So they did it. I signed off. And once I worked through all my managers, I said, okay, here's the deal. Now you are going to do the same thing with your subordinates, and we are going to certify the entire, program, the department, all of our personnel to do everything we need to do within, this department. So we did that. And what I quickly created was a spreadsheet that I could look at a moment's notice and I could fill objectives. I could fill deliveries, right? If I needed a person here or a person there, I could say, okay, this deliverable requires X, Y, and Z. Let me look at my spreadsheet. Oh, I can see, you know, Sonette can do X, Y, and Z. Tommy can do X, Y, and Z. Chris can do this, right? Cheryl can do this as well. So I'm going to put those folks on this because they're trained and they're competent. So, basically within a few weeks, all of my team members were trained and ready for current and future roles. So that's a way to handle it. Now let's move on. Let's get more specific here. Okay. Clear goals and roles. You might think to yourself, a racy chart. I know what a racy chart is. I deal with a racy chart. We're not going to dive that deep into a racy chart. But really, what I want you to know is that, as we look forward in 2026, the role of a project manager is changing faster and faster than ever. I've said it a couple times, and to thrive, it's not just about managing tasks. You need to intentionally build the skills that will make you effective as a modern, technologically driven, and distributed work team, right? And let's walk through some of these things. There are four different areas that I've kind of dialed in on that I like to talk to you about. Clear goals and roles. Make sure each team member understands, their responsibilities, their deliverables, and how their work connects to the bigger picture of goals, right? I would ask you this, right? And not a show of hands or anything like that, but how many of you actually understand the vision and mission of your organization? And take it a step further, how do you fit into that piece of pie? How do you support the vision and mission of your organization? Talk about a little thing called buy-in. For me personally, I need to understand the vision and the mission of my organization. And I need that so I can see how me and my team fit within that. How can we support the strategic goals of that organization? Well, One way is to make sure that the goals are clear, and it all starts from strategic vision of that organization. Okay, and then as you drill it down to the department level or the team, project team level, you can use Hive, you can use Monday, Asana, ClickUp, Rike, Jira, and those are only a few of the AI tools they can use to do this, right? So, we talked about leading distributed teams, so we'll kind of buzz over that, but make sure that you communicate clearly and effectively and frequently, right? I used to have a sign over my desk when I was a program leader or a program manager, and it said, "Who else needs to know?" Right? And it wasn't there just to look cool, right? It was there because truly, who else needs to know? Because things that I'm working on in my department, there may be other departments that are working on things that are similar. How do we integrate? How can I make, you know, Tessa's job easier? Well, first I have to know what she's working on, and I have to know how I can integrate that and support that. How can I make Lindsay's job easier? Well, communicate, right? That's a skill set. What are you working on? How can I add value to it? Oh, you're doing this? Oh, did you know, by the way, that we can use AI to do X, Y, and Z, and it makes it a lot easier? The thing is with AI, you always have to go back and double check because it will throw some funky stuff out there if you don't proofread. How many of you have seen that? When I first started using AI, I took it for granted and it published reports and I submitted them thinking they were good. Nope. You have to proofread that stuff. So another thing is, tracking and maintaining accountability. So we use Hive where I'm at, but that's also very important. So what does this mean to you, right? Your ability to clearly communicate, engage your team, and maintain alignment virtually, it directly impacts productivity, morale, right, and process success. AI and automation literacy. Wow, this is a good one, right? So the PMBOK in 2025, the new one, the eighth edition that just came out, right? It states that, project may leverage automation and AI to streamline project execution, reduce human error, and enhance product productivity, right? Can't get any more bottom line than that, right? And like I've said many times, there's AI scheduling assistance to help you automate. Okay, there's tools like Microsoft Copilot. How many of you have used Microsoft Copilot? Right, it can do a couple things. Clockwise can also do it. They can automatically automate, optimize meetings, schedules, or even deadlines. Rike is another one that I've mentioned earlier, and it utilizes historical and real-time signals to flag any sort of risks, right? So it generates dynamic risk scores and suggests preventative actions. So, we talk about contingency plans. We have a risk register, but what do we do when those risks turn into issues? Okay. Rike is an example of something that can help you navigate that. Power BI. Okay. As we move on, Power BI is something else that you can use to generate reports. Miro, it's a collaborative idea board where participants can submit their ideas and they can use AI to kind of cluster those ideas, summarize, enhance those ideas. It's sort of like virtual brainstorming, if you will. You're throwing at the wall, you see if it sticks, and then, oh, by the way, you get virtual artificial intelligence to kind of synthesize it for you. Okay. And this really matters because as a project manager, you understanding how to effectively leverage AI, it can reduce errors, it can make decisions faster, okay, and it can focus on really what drives project success, right? Business goals, etc. So adaptive and agile leadership. As we kind of move down this list here, the third area, how many of you have been told be flexible in your job, right? You've been told, be flexible. Mm. What does that mean to you? Could mean a couple things, right? It could mean that there's no plan whatsoever and we're just flying by the seat of our pants. Or, It could mean that we're in a rapidly changing environment and the requirements are unknown. Mm, maybe those things are the same thing, right? Just one is more of a professional way to say it. I don't know. But modern teams, they're cross-functional in a lot of cases, and often they're self-organizing, which requires a shift from directive management to facilitation. Okay. And some examples might include, responsibilities, empowering Scrum teams, for example, dynamic shifting resources. Okay. Plenty of things here to meet those emerging technologies. So, they allow your project teams to adapt to your strategies and the specific challenges and conditions that you're faced with. And then, of course, the last one, data driven project management competence. I often hear, or at least in past organizations, Brandon, we want to do X, Y, and Z. Can we do X, Y, and Z? What's the data say? Do we have metrics on that? If we don't, what is our strategy to develop metrics? What can we do to get metrics? And a perfect example of that can be seen in the very beginning of this webinar. I purposely sent out a poll to gather metrics because I want to know what my audience is consisting of. I want to know what you need. What drives you? What keeps you up? What's your goals? Okay, so looking at that data-driven PM competence, right? You need to be comfortable interpreting, analytics, dashboards, forecasting models to guide strategy. Our strategy is A, we want to get to Z. How do we get to Z? Well, do we have metrics? Do we have a strategy? Right? You need both of those things, right? How do you remember, do you remember the wood price in 2020? What do you think that project managers did with their strategy in 2020? It was probably haywire, right? I mean, I know of some instances where a person was building a house and the wood price shot all the way up, and their house cost them $60,000 additional to build that thing. He put his plans on hold. That house is no longer being built, right? So it impacted us. Now, could that have been predicted? Maybe. I'll tell you what couldn't have been predicted, right? The great toilet paper shortage is something of 2020 that no AI could predict. As I look back on that, I still don't know what happened, but the stores were empty and no one could figure it out. Okay. So just a little bit off topic there. But what does this do for you? Think about it. You lead with data. It ensures that your decisions are objectable, right? Measurable. They're aligned with business outcomes and business strategy. They reduce risk. They increase credibility as a project manager. So, the big takeaway here is that to thrive in 2026 and beyond, mastering these skills is not something that's optional. They're absolutely essential, right? That strong virtual collaboration, developing these capabilities, you position yourself to lead teams, okay, effectively, right? That's the key word. You make smarter decisions. You stay ahead in an environment that's rapidly changing, and sometimes it can be unpredictable. So, as we move on to the next section, we're going to explore some concrete actions that you can take this week, right, to start building these skills. Okay. So it's not just a webinar with a conversation. It's something that you can take notes on, that you can implement in your everyday life, right? So you leave today not with just insights or something to chew on, right? But a clear path to grow, right, in your capabilities. So let's do that. Let's move on. Before I do that, let me ask a question. Are you still with me? Are you following what I'm saying? Does it resonate? I hope so. Because what I've seen in the field is what I'm talking about today. Okay. Now, granted, my decades of experience was probably before AI, but I'm smart enough to know how to integrate it. I'm smart enough to know how to understand it. And I'm intelligent enough to know that if I don't adapt and change and leverage it, I'll become a blockbuster. All right, I'm getting some comments there. Yes, I'm tracking with you too. Why? Because this is real talk. I'm not reading from a book. This is real talk. Okay? I see you there, Jack. Thank you, sir. All right, so let's talk about some things that you can do. Staying competitive. Okay? Toys R Us. Okay, that's one example that we didn't explore. But they struggled to pivot into e-commerce, while competitors like Amazon, they jumped into it. And what's happening right now? Did you know it's the wildest thing? I can order something off Amazon and get it tomorrow. I mean, you have to be what they call it, the Prime subscriber or something, right? But I can get that thing tomorrow. It's easier for me to do that, than go to Walmart. Toys R Us didn't think so, and Toys R Us is no longer a thing. Okay, let's keep moving. Okay, okay. Staying competitive in a rapidly evolving landscape. So understanding emerging frameworks. Okay, so it might mean that a marketing team is, launching a new campaign and they're using a hybrid framework, right? They plan major milestones and they plan their budgets and their approvals up front, but the creative content like social media posts and their email sequences and their graphics is developed in short iterative cycles, right? So that kind of hybrid there. So we plan everything up front. We have this long project that has different phases. And how many of you know all the phases of project management? Here's a little acronym. I plan every Monday consistently. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what that stands for. You can do your own homework on that, give you something to dial into, right? But leveraging technology for efficiency. And that might mean a software team uses ClickUp, right, to consolidate project updates, automate status reports, okay, and highlight some tasks that are overdue. So AI suggests to help, prioritize work based on the deliverables, maybe even based on, how long it's going to take between each one of those durations, keeping projects on schedule with less manual effort. So building your professional network. Okay, you'll notice I'm picking up pace here just a little bit because I want to make sure I get you all the information. But building your professional network, what does that mean? It could mean something as simple as adding a project manager onto your LinkedIn, right? And if if you were to add me on LinkedIn, I'll give you a perfect example, right? Um, you're connecting with like-minded professionals, right? And when RMC posts something, when Peterson's posts something, of course, I'm going to repost that and you'll be able to see it. So if we're running promotions or if it gives you something to think about, or in the future, if we say, hey, you know what? We want to give webinars, but we don't want to just arbitrarily create webinars. We want to know what you think about webinars, right? Connecting with other professionals in that network, you can drive the conversation. You at the wheel driving what you want to hear about. Okay. So, you know, think about that. Continuous process improvement. I kind of slipped this one in here simply because I'm not going to lie, I am a little bit partial to continuous process improvement. You saw the Lean Six Sigma Black Belt at the beginning of this webinar, and it is something that I truly believe in. I will look at something and think of ways that I can improve it almost to a fault, because I'm always hyped up. I'm always on the go. And, truly, you can ask anybody that I work with. I'm always thinking of ways to make something better, even if it's good enough. Um, I've always been a huge supporter of process improvement. And something you can take away from this, at every program that I've ever managed throughout my career, I would always brief my people in the beginning of assuming responsibility for that program. And I would say, if at any time any of you have a better idea than me or a better idea than what we're currently doing, bring that up to me. And if we implement it, I will grant you a 4-day weekend. Okay. And believe me, I had the tightest program around because everybody wanted to bring me the good ideas. I mean, it was almost like nothing could go wrong because I had every single person, from the most junior person all the way to me, looking for ways to improve that thing. Now, some of you are going to say, well, there was an incentive attached. I don't care because I leveraged what I had in my pocket and I used it. and it made those programs, it made those people, it made those organizations fantastic. And I don't regret a day of it. So use what you have, pull those tools out. It's a rapidly evolving landscape, and you got to be prepared. Let's move on. Now, a couple different things that you can do. Okay. Now, on the left-hand side, you're going to see the overall idea of what you can do. And on the right-hand side, you're going to kind of see a high-level description of it. So map out your future project management skills. And there's the outcome on the right-hand side. I won't read that to you. But as we look down, we see completed leadership micro-learning. And again, on the right-hand side, it kind of gives you high level. Okay. Conduct a 1-week project trend audit. And now let's break those down one by one and see exactly what that means. Okay. Action 1, map your future project management skills. So list out your skills and your competencies. And if you don't know what they should look like, if you say to yourself, well, Brandon, I'm just a project manager, I'm a beginner, I don't know what they should look like. Go to pmi.org, okay? Not affiliated with that, but I'm telling you, they are the industry leading for project management. Go there, download the examination content outline, which is an ECO, right? Examination content outline. Just go to Google, you'll find it. And you'll find 3 different domains: people, processes, and business environment. In each one of those, you're going to find tasks and enablers. And that, ladies and gentlemen, think of them as KPIs and competencies. That is what you should be doing as a project manager. So in a nutshell, you're going to go beyond technical project management tools. You're going to look at your soft skills like communication, and you're going to go down that list and you're going to annotate those skills or knowledge areas that you need to know. Write them down and be real. Be real about it. If you're a poor communicator, then say that. You're not going to improve if you don't identify those gaps. You're not. Create visual skill gap matrix. Okay, it could look like something like I told you about when I was managing programs in the past. But as long as you identify those gaps in accordance with, the ECO, that's a good start if you don't know where to start. Now, after you identify these, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to come up with a strategy, right? And that strategy may look like completing a leadership micro learning. And, there are many ways that you could do this. Okay, you could put this into action. And it might look like focusing 30 to 60 minutes next week. And you'll notice I marked that out. Why? Because I'm going to keep it real. It's Friday. It's probably after lunch for most of you, or at lunch. And probably the only thing you're trying to learn is how fast you can clock out in the next couple hours, right? Yeah, I know what's going on. But so let's just think about it in terms of next week, shall we? Where can you look to find these micro learnings? Let's talk about free, because free is good, right? LinkedIn Learning, that's a good one. There's free courses on there based on what your gaps are. There's Allison, there's Coursera. And then, of course, if you want something more robust and you want to dive in deep, there's Peterson's and RMC. Okay. Once you have this dialed in, okay, you want to move on to something else. And it might look like conducting a 1-week audit, right? Identify 3 emerging trends that are relevant to your project. What's going wrong is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, in your projects. Is it the scope? Is it the schedule? Is it the cost? Is it your stakeholder engagement? Find 3 trends that are going wrong. Use what you learned and fix it. That's simple. Okay, it's not simple. It's going to take effort, just as everything takes effort. Consider trends like AI scheduling, hybrid workflows, adaptive team structures. It might mean you're just creating a daily stand-up with your team. Okay, that's what it might mean. But it's definitely something to look into and implement as a result of this audit. Okay. Now, key takeaways here. As we wrap up, our takeaways are understanding emerging trends, shifts in agile, okay, adaptive team structures, and technology. Okay, another takeaway is, focusing on adapting and skills, right? Upskilling your skills so you're ready for future project management. Okay, and finally, staying aware of these shifts can help you remain competitive, relevant in a rapidly evolving landscape. Okay, giving you the tools, the knowledge, and the insight to lead projects effectively and confidently. Okay, apply these takeaways, right? They're not just words on a screen, right? And if you do that, instead of putting out fires daily, you might just be able to put down the fire extinguisher and pick up a plan. Okay, what do you think about that? Are you still with me? Is it resonating? Okay, I see you. Excellent. All right, let's move on, shall we? Now, continuing your learning journey with RMC, we offer many different ways. Okay, now we can't conclude, right, without talking about what we offer in addition to giving the tools and techniques and insight to be a more effective project manager. So, we offer a couple different things. There's numerous approaches that fit your needs, whether if it's in person, virtual, or e learning. We have 3, 4, 5 day classes, in some cases, 10-week courses. Okay, downloadable audio books. We also have material on Amazon. Okay, and then we have all of Rita's products there. Now, you're going to see a QR code coming up shortly. That QR code will bring you to RMC's site, so you can explore more there and see what fits what you need for your KPI gaps and your budget. Now, one thing that we do offer also is the CAPM, right? And it's Certified Associate in Project Management. So it's really an entry-level project management certification, right? It's offered by PMI, and of course, that's a registered trademark for individuals who want to demonstrate foundational knowledge of project management. So our course offers 24 contact hours, um, you know, and we lead it with virtual instructor-led courses as well. So it's it's very helpful for those of you who want to, get in the course and really understand it. And unlike webinars where I'm speaking the whole time and it's really a one-way conversation, our classes are a two-way conversation. You ask questions, I will stop in the middle of a course to explain something. And if you don't get it the first time, that's my fault. I will explain it in 5 different ways until you understand the applicability of that complex concept. I'm not going to read the textbook to you, right? Not trying to sound fancy. I'm trying to help you understand so you can be successful. Now let's move on to our PMP. Now the PMP is Project Management Professional and it's globally recognized just the same. It's an advanced certification, right? And it offers, as you can see here, it offers 35 contact hours, not necessarily 3,535, but 35 contact hours. I'll have that corrected there. And you've heard a couple things about it. Is it challenging? Yes, it is absolutely challenging. Otherwise, everybody on LinkedIn would have the PMP after their name. You have to truly understand all the domains, the people, the processes, the business environment, and I am here for that. Okay, now let's keep moving. So here are upcoming webinars, and I know that many folks, you know, they want to, what I really want you to do is focus on the first two. Many folks want to project out, but I want you to focus on the first two. And why is that? Because I want you to tell us what you want in March and April. What keeps you up at night? What gives you headaches? Is it stakeholder engagement? Is it risk? Let us know. Okay, let's move on. Now, how to claim your PDUs. Now, if you have a certification, go ahead, scan the QR code and submit your PDUs. Now, if you don't need your PDUs, let me explain what that is. So, for those that are not yet have not yet earned their certification, PDUs are a way to demonstrate ongoing learning and professional growth in project management. They help ensure that certified professionals stay current with industry practices, tools, techniques, skills, etc., and they are required to maintain your certification in good standing. So if you have a PMP, that's 60 professional development units or PDUs every 3 years. And if you have your CAPM, it is 15 PDUs. Okay, so take a screenshot, take a picture, and a pro tip, if you point your camera at this number 2 there in the center, you'll see a little circle with a T in it. You can actually click that and it will copy all the text, and you can either paste it or put it in your notepad or whatever you want to do with it. Um, but bottom line up front, take a picture of this slide so that way you'll have the description, and like I said, that QR code will send you straight to PMI so you can log in on their website and submit your PDUs. It's worth one PDU. Okay, are we good here? Okay, we're about 1 minute over, and I do want to respect your time, so I'm gonna give you about 10 seconds to take a picture of this before I move on. You are welcome. You are absolutely welcome. I am here for that. And I'm all about continued discussion too. All right, I'm going to move on from this slide here. And finally, with 1 minute over time, okay, scope, schedule, time, we busted time. Okay, but hopefully, your scope, we dialed that in and we're good on the scope. What are your questions? Now, if you feel more comfortable, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go all the way back up to the front there to my slide. If you enjoyed this, please give us feedback. If you enjoyed this and the conversation, shoot me a request there on LinkedIn, and we can continue the conversation with like-minded professionals, and you can stay in tune with what Peterson and RMC offers. And this is only the surface, ladies and gentlemen. This is only the beginning. Okay, let me see here. Okay, absolutely welcome. Okay, looks like I do have no questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm going to close our session. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to our next session, and tell your friends, like, subscribe. No, that's what the YouTubers say, right? Share with your friends, okay? If you know somebody, if there's someone that you mentor, coach, or train, and they need to have these conversations, let them know. And you're welcome. A comment says no questions, but thank you for the useful information. Absolutely. Share this, okay? I'm all about spreading the knowledge to make us all better, to make you more successful in what you do and what we bring to the table as project managers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. With that, I am signing off, and I will see you next time.